Hello, friends. This is the Connected Approach podcast, the world's #1 podcast for connected leaders. I'm Chris Curtin.
And I'm Amanda White. Welcome today to your warm embrace. I think the topic for today is going to be around preparedness, or how to best be prepared in being able to show up as your best self. So, Chris, we've had a lot of discussions around this in the last week, but even beyond that. So, what are your thoughts there? You want to tee it up as to what that means to you and where you've been thinking in that regard?
Yeah, Amanda, this has been just something we've been, you're right, working on with clients. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's this centrifugal force of whether we call them saboteurs, and we do, but whether
Yes.
you call them the voices in your head going, what's the point of being prepared? The
Right.
meeting, the ask, the opportunity is just going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Or I
I have
already
my other
know,
full-time job.
right. I already know what's going to happen. And they, the mysterious they, will approve this request or approve of what I'm offering or not. And I've fallen in the trap before of
Yeah.
over preparing, and that makes me nervous, right? All these things that help us rationalize not being as prepared as we want to be. And you and I have seen some of the consequences of that
Yeah.
recently. So that's why I'm just excited about talking about this topic today. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about what I
Yeah.
just shared?
Yeah, well, I think it really is. I mean, whether we're talking about, a presentation to fill in the blank, investors, board members, senior leadership in the community, whatever, we are focused around persuasion, executive persuasion, or leader persuasion. Whenever there's something that you're going to be up in front and needing to present and persuade, or just get your point across, or be able to show up in the best way that you want to show up, which we always talk about, leading self first, right? Like, be clear on how you want to lead yourself, and then why is that important? And so we have been training on this, but we've also had some one-on-one clients that we've really been talking about this in our own situations where we've had this come up, all very recently. And it's interesting to really start to dissect what happens when you're in that situation. And we call them saboteurs, but it's realizing these voices or these actions or behaviors that start to take you out and you don't even realize it. But it's like, if you're not paying attention, it's like, oh crap, like that thing, that really big thing that is important to me is next week. And I haven't, I'm not prepared, and I haven't been intentional about what I need to do in order to make sure I'm my best self. So there's a process with that. And we have been working with clients, and we've been working, amongst ourselves, with the situations that we have too, about, okay, well, have you thought, like, what is it that you want to show up as, or how do you want to show up, and what do you need to get there, and what do you need to be aware of to, like, knock out, clear the webs away, or keep those saboteuring thoughts, or whatever. What are you going to do that day of to make sure that you're in your best mind? So, those are just a few of my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell I'm sort of
I think
squirming.
passionate about this.
I'm squirming in my seat because I'm so excited about this topic and what it's bringing up for me. Is, as you often ask, like, what's coming up for you?
Yeah.
One question that we've been posing to clients in this instance is, what are the three things you want to describe about yourself in this situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You in this challenging, emotional um, situation, what do you want to describe yourself as?
Yep.
Calm, cool, collected, whatever the three words are, confident,
Right.
motivating, right?
Yep.
Persuading, whatever the words are. For the client to define that for themselves, or for, you're right, we're our own clients, for
Right.
us to
Yeah.
define that for ourselves as we go into these stressful situations and important situations. And as part of our preparation, you can then start to define what victory looks like at the end of the process. And
Yep.
as the Bostonians would say, irregardless of what the actual decision is by those that those
You're
things that are
presenting
outside,
to. Yeah.
yeah, that those things that are really outside your control.
Right.
Because it is about what can we control our best. And when our clients start to zero in on those three words, and those three words are just a way for them to start to frame, how do I best control what I can control?
Right.
There are a myriad of benefits you get from that, whether
Mhm.
you get the A-OK, we're going to fund this project, or A-OK, we're going to offer you this opportunity, or not. And I just encourage, our listeners to think about that. One, there is the self-respect and dignity and pride that you have in showing up in that way, in preparing in that way, and then executing as you've prepared. And some
Right.
people say, well, if they still reject the Shark Tank pitch or whatever, that's disappointing. Is it?
Right.
Because you've created your own internal victory for yourself. Like, okay, this is what victory will look like in what I control.
Right.
And you've created a whole new level of respect for yourself and being a fan for yourself, right? We're the one
Right.
person in our lives cheering in the auditorium for ourselves. And while you may think that that was an end all be all decision, yes on this important project or this Shark Tank initiative or whatever it is,
Right.
you gained a fan in yourself. I
Yeah.
guarantee you gained fans who are who are the decision makers, whoever you're pitching to or
Yeah.
whoever is observing, and that always creates ripple effects that we sometimes don't know can
Yeah.
result in other good fortune. And those are just two of them that I can think of.
Right.
And there are probably more. I'm in a stressful situation right now where I'm doing some negotiating over some opportunities that we have for the business.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be intentional about how I'm talking to various stakeholders, lawyers, people helping put the deal together, investors. And based on this
Right.
work that we're doing with preparedness, I'm saying to myself, what words do I want to use?
Yeah.
Do I want to use words like, well, we're being threatened, or, we're being,
Right. Yeah.
can we use that, or can we just say, hey, how do we want to address this challenge? Because regardless or irregardless of how this turns out, I want to look back at how I've been in this most exciting and most challenging portion of the business and in my professional life and say, were you an emotional wreck? Were you flying off the handle and being like, well, I'm not sure? Or were you being as measured and as open and learning through this process and calm through this process
Hmm.
as you could have been? Now, my calm is different from someone else's calm. So my calm is not going to be,
Yes.
like who, the, I don't know, a pitch man for EF Hutton or something or whatever, old school reference, but someone that's has a different style. But I can still be my most calm self. I can still be my most rational and even self, even if that blips differently. So,
Right. Well, and the other thing that we had some recent conversations in a group coaching session about this is looking out for the theys. I always like push my hands, sorry, push my hands like out. You talk about like what's in our control, and it's like, well, those, investors or the leadership team didn't get us this, or, therefore, like I wasn't able to prepare when I wanted to prepare. And that again, those are the traps, right? Those are the saboteurs, because that's you can't you want to stay away from blame, from, anything in that area, because that is all fear, right? Being able to just kind of push away fear instead of saying, like, they're not going to help me look better when I'm up in front of whoever. Like, so whenever you find yourself like in a situation like, oh, I had this, I had that, those are all, I don't know, opportunities, obstacles for us to learn in, right? So I
mhm.
think that's a big one to like pay attention to, is when you start to like find yourself spiraling and you start to say the they words, that is like somebody else's responsibility. But the best way to pull out of that, and you were saying it, is, we talk about in coaching all the time about what is the desired outcome for whatever it is that you want to talk about, or that the kind of the broader what your goals are. And then what does success look like? So I love the way that, we've really been talking about like, what are those three words that would help you focus in on how you want to be, so that at the end of whatever it is that you're giving, you feel like success. Exactly what you said. You have respect for yourself, you feel good about it, regardless of how things turn out. And then to be at peace to say, like, okay, like if it didn't turn out in that way, at least I know I showed up in my very best way possible. And, there's another thing out there for me.
Well, and Shark Tank is probably the most ubiquitous example
Yeah.
of that. What's success at Shark Tank? Well, for Mark Cuban to give me $10 million for 2% of my business that just
Right.
started up. Okay, yes,
Hey, that's a
that
great
that
idea, by the way.
that's success. Are
Yeah.
there other successes that can occur with you being on Shark Tank that that aren't automatically tied to the
Hmm.
success of one of the sharks investing,
Yeah.
or
Does it
what
help
can you
you get over
specifically?
a fear that then allows you to open other doors? Right? And it's that kind of thinking too. Like it goes beyond the presentation. It's like, where how do you complete that cycle in your thinking, to say, hey, if this wasn't it, that must mean that there's other doors that, to open for me. And now that I've gone through this, I have the courage to do that, or whatever.
Right. I struck out with four, I think it's four, right? Or it's five, very famous and very capable investors. And I succeeded in sharing the product the way I
Hmm.
wanted to, presenting my pitch the way I wanted to, being myself, the self I wanted to show
Yep.
up in the Shark Tank, and in the interview afterwards when they said, "Hey, you didn't get funding," but I had the right answer as opposed to saying something that would, bury my opportunities to seek other investors. And now I have the rest of the world to approach as potential investors, right? Including everyone that
Right.
saw my pitch and said, "Well, wait a minute, this is a good idea," or whatever. And so it's so important,
Yeah.
as we've talked about, sort of going deep with clients to say, yes, we all know that the outcome you're looking for is that everyone buys every idea you have, and for no effort and for $1
Yeah.
billion. Got it.
Yeah.
What short of that could be success, so that you can really start to define what you can be
Hmm.
proud of, after completing something that is rigorous and challenging. Anytime you're
Hmm.
standing up in front of other people and saying, I have an idea and I
Yeah.
want you to buy into my idea. That's high stress all the way to,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
the anthropological elements of the 100-person tribes that we all lived in for hundreds of thousands of years, to my anthropology courses in college. But honestly, for the longest time that hominids started to develop, there were these 100-person only tribes. And for one person to stand up and say, "You're going to look at me," there was a
Yeah.
that's a big deal. And that's
Right.
what we're asking people to do when we ask them, or they prepare to stand up in front of others to share an idea. And so they have to think about what success can be. And preparation is a big part of that. It's interesting. Whether I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I only have a few original ideas, so they all might be coming back. But there was a conversation among Seinfeld alums talking about how hard it was to be on the show, and that one of the actors was reflecting back to Jerry Seinfeld, the real Jerry Seinfeld, how frustrated he was that he didn't enjoy the show, the ride of being on Seinfeld, and the icon that it was,
Yeah.
and because he was so focused on his preparation,
Yeah.
and that he would be pacing in the back intensely trying to find the right way to deliver lines and to create the comedy that it was. And Jerry Seinfeld interrupted him and said, "No, no, 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 no. One, I don't judge process. And two, your job isn't to have fun, or your job isn't to just be like, well, let's see what happens. Your job's to be ready when the red light goes on. When it's
Yeah.
time to go, your job is to be prepared and to be ready to create this remarkable comedy. It isn't necessarily to just have fun,
Yeah.
or feel like you could be lighter than you can be. Some people can do that, but
Yeah.
whatever you have to do, and you're at your time when they say they're ready for you now, and you
Yeah.
stand up in front of that audience of one, that audience of five, that audience of 5,000, you have to be ready, and as ready as you can be,
Right.
and as centered as you can be, because
Yeah.
it can't be about the person who didn't give you the microphone or didn't connect your microphone right,
Right. The
or the
days.
spot, the days,
Yeah.
that they screwed up the spotlight. The people were eating, and so they didn't really pay attention to me.
Yeah.
They.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it can't be about them. It has to be about you. Now, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that if the microphone's off, they'll hear you as well, but you can still be prepared to do your best.
Right. Right. And in the most authentic way as possible, too. I
Mm,
mean, that's important. You have to do it in a way that's going to be in alignment with, what we would call like your sage powers, right? And because otherwise they're going to see right through you.
agreed. And by being prepared, by asking yourself not just the questions of how do I want to show up, but by really, as we've talked about, red teaming, what could go wrong? Well, what happens if the microphone doesn't work and you're in front of a large audience?
Right.
Well, you can start to tick through pretty quickly the steps you'll take to try to remedy that. And just by setting forth those four things you would do. Well,
Right.
first I'll very calmly check if it's on, if it's a lavalier mic or it's a mic I'm holding.
Right.
Or I will nod to the technology team and say, "Can you help me here? Let's give it a
Yeah.
minute, folks. We're just going to see if we can." Even just walking through those steps, you go,
Well, yeah.
that won't be so bad. And if all goes to heck in a handbasket and you're in front of a large audience, walk off the stage and start to engage with them in a way that your voice will carry.
Right.
And just having that 30-second exchange saying, "What will we do if the mic is off?" You go,
Right.
"Oh, I got my four-stepper or my three-stepper to that." And handling that gracefully, handling that in a way like, "Oh, they do this all the time because it seemed like they checked through or ticked off a three-step process for modulation challenges," whatever they would say. And,
Right.
and now the audience is at ease and you're still in control. And
Yeah.
that's all a part of kind of red teaming what could go wrong. And one
Well,
question,
yeah, and what I mean, just even envisioning where you're at, where you're going to be talking, what's the room dynamic, all of those things, just putting yourself in the situation so you're aware and you're not walking in cold. So I think, and it's funny, it's what's striking me, Chris, is that we are talking about, so much definitely goes into the preparedness, like just being prepared and setting your intention and really being clear on what's important and what success looks like. What are the fears that might pop up? Make sure that you're identifying those so you can just kind of bat them down. What is it that makes you show up at your best? Like, make sure you're doing a routine that morning, that is, a good breakfast, not too heavy, not too, or go for a walk, something to get movement. It's just like really planning those things out that go far beyond when you're in front of the audience, but they're so important. But I also think it really is, I keep saying, I mean, I've tied this back to something that we've called like the stress cycle, like completing that stress cycle, which this is an extremely stressful situation, right? So with everything, you do want to, it's when you're done with the presentation, you do want to complete, almost we talk about like an after action review, right? Like once you've gone through whatever that big thing is, you know do that debrief, with yourself to complete that, to say, hey, you know what? I said that I wanted to do, show up in these 3 ways. I did, you know? Is there anything I could have done better? Maybe, is there anything that, you can kind of go through that. But I think also talking with someone so that you can, pull through that learning piece, so it's kind of like, hey, if I don't get this, this is what I'm proud of. This is what I'm happy with. Because there's a lot of times I've been in coaching situations where it's like, "Oh my gosh, you just went through this and just think about like this and this." And they're like, but I didn't get the thing." And it's like, "But you did get a lot of other things." So I think that's a good kind of wrap on the things that we're talking about.
Yes.
What other things would come to kind of
Well,
like summary points for you?
yeah, summary points for you. I mean, I think with the after action review, you're right on. And once again, the questions of the after action review. What
Or we
was
call them key learnings, right? Like in
sure.
coaching, like what are your key learnings right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, what was the mission? Well, my
Yeah.
mission was to, was to not be rattled by, by whatever the circumstance were, to be prepared, right?
Right.
To kind of walk in prepared and to show up as these, for example, 3 things, just to what we've been talking about on today's podcast. But what was your mission? Okay.
Yeah.
What actually happened? That's the
Yeah.
second question, the after action. Then, okay, what, if anything, could be done differently next time?
Yeah.
Okay. And then who needs to know? And
Yeah.
as long as you're able to follow and answer those questions and not get mired in the third one, well, what could have been
Yeah.
different? Well, I think I wore a green tie and it should have been a blue tie. What,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
just sort of like, okay, and then be done with it,
Yeah.
so that you can gather it and move on. And then I'm with you. There are the sage gifts that should show themselves,
Yes.
after you have been prepared for and executed on a successful mission. Knowledge. You've gained some knowledge. You've gained
Yeah.
some measure of power, even if it's your power over fear of
Yeah.
making a pitch or being on Shark Tank,
Right. Right.
and or inspiration. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I, I did something that before Shark Tank producers called me, I could have never thought I did. And look at how much more I can be, or I can deliver.
Yeah.
And shame on people that are not interested in taking those gifts,
Yeah.
recognizing those gifts, and taking them with them on the rest of their life journey. Otherwise, you're just standing at the mini mart trying to scratch off a lottery ticket. And when it doesn't go your way, you chuck it in the basket. It's not like that.
Right. That's
There's
yes.
there's victory everywhere.
Right.
There are new gifts that you can add to your own self-esteem and to your own toolkit everywhere, if you prepare and if
Yeah.
you're open to what success can be within your
Right.
control. So those are my summary points.
Yeah, and intentional. We talk about intentionality all the time, but being intentional about what's most important. So I think that sums it up, Chris. I think we're both very passionate about this topic and could talk more. And I think it's important with the work that we're doing with our clients too. So it's been wonderful talking with you about this.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Well, thanks, Amanda, for our conversation today. I always enjoy these conversations. And as for our listeners, we look forward to talking to you again soon. Until
Yes.
then, lead well, my friends.
And stay true to you. Bye bye, everybody.